Now available on audio CD from the Anatomy of Intimacy series, Infidelity, Beyond Trauma to Transformation.
Forgiveness may be divine. It takes a really big heart to forgive, frankly, bigger than mine. Don't preach to me about forgiveness because it's not, I simply can't get there. I feel compromised. I feel it's cheap. The person doesn't deserve it. And I won't forgive. Or they'll try to forgive. Often in our religions and cultures we're taught we should forgive. But inside they feel cheated or compromised and disingenuous.
Experts include Dr. Janice Abrams-Spring, author of After the Affair, Healing the Pain and Rebuilding Trust When a Partner Has Been Unfaithful.
So until now there's been only these two options. You either forgive or you don't forgive, which is one of the biggest problems in the model. Because forgiveness is too generous, often, when the person who hurts you is narcissistic or dead, unavailable to make meaningful repairs. You'll be damned if you're going to forgive them. So there's the forgiveness and the not forgiving. The forgiveness is too generous, and not forgiving, we know, makes us sick. It's not a healthy option. Living in a grudge state, hating and hurting, is not a healthy option. And so it occurred to me that there was something missing. And what I did is I went on to develop a healthy alternative to forgiveness, which I call acceptance. And I spell out exactly what you can do to heal yourself when the person who hurt you is not sorry. It's not forgiveness. The forgiveness is reserved for the offender who has the courage and character to make good. And that's what we're going to be talking about and applying to infidelity. The specific steps that the offender must take to earn forgiveness. I don't believe that forgiveness is an ideal. I don't believe you're a better person when you forgive. And I don't believe that forgiving makes you better. Just the opposite. I believe that when the person who hurts you steps up and takes responsibility for the harm that they've caused and offers a meaningful apology and makes serious and relevant repairs, he becomes a better person. You're not the better person for forgiving. He's the better person for earning your forgiveness. So we're going to be talking about this.
Dr. Marty Klein, psychotherapist, couples therapist, and certified sex therapist, and award-winning author of 7 books.
In sex, nobody does everything. I mean, nobody does every single thing. Nobody does everything. And in fact, if you're in a couple, eventually things sort themselves out, and you do, 5 different things, 6 different things. Sometimes you do all 6, sometimes you only do 1 or 2. Depends on if you have to get up early the next morning. But over time, many couples, if you're going to have a conflict-free and a healthy sexual relationship, couples eventually come to some kind of consensus about what they're going to do. Well, some couples never do that. With some couples, there's conflict every time they have sex together. Are we going to have cunnilingus or are we not going to have cunnilingus? Are we going to do it with the lights on or are we going to do it with the lights off? Are we going to let the dog watch or are we not going to let the dog watch? Well, imagine every time you have sex, you have to pay for it by having a stupid argument about, are we going to let the dog watch? That's one of the reasons people gradually have less and less sex, because they don't want to deal with that nonsense. They don't want to deal with, can we please have the lights on just this one time? They just don't want to deal with that kind of frustration. So the lack of agreement on sexual routines is another reason that masturbation with pornography can look awfully attractive to some people. And as you know, and this is another talk altogether, but as you know, when couples have not had sex for a long time, whatever that means, the next time they have sex, it takes a lot of effort to sort of get everything moving. And so in couples like that, where the sex is infrequent, regardless of the quality, where the sex is infrequent, and it takes a lot of effort to create the next sexual encounter, masturbation with pornography, where there's no startup cost. You know, the second you sit down, you're all ready to go. You don't have to talk anybody into it. Masturbation with pornography can seem like a pretty good alternative. And of course, with masturbation, there are no contraceptive issues, and there's no fertility conflicts. And for some people, masturbation, whether it's with pornography or not, but we're talking about pornography now, for some people, masturbation with pornography is the only sex where they feel alive. It's the only sex where they feel not self-conscious. It's the only sex where they feel like they can really be their authentic sexual self. So for some people, masturbating with pornography seems like a pretty attractive option. Now on top of that, let's add the painful dilemma of long-term monogamy. And that is that typically, the sex gets less interesting, less frequent, less intimate, less nourishing. Any of you who are like going to get married next week, you might want to reconsider. Now I say typically because that's not true for everybody. And the length of time that this process takes for different couples can be very different. For some people, this doesn't happen until, you know, the third month. For other couples, it takes 20 years. And like I say, this is typical, not for everyone. But this is the painful dilemma that a lot of our people, a lot of our clients walk in needing to wrestle with. That they're facing a sex life that's very different than the one that they thought they were going to have. And they may be facing a sex life that's very different than the sex life that they used to have. And what are they supposed to do about this? Well, couples don't like to talk about that, do they? And in fact, conflicts about pornography can be a way that a couple avoids discussing these issues. And that's one of the big take-home messages that I want you to please have for today, from me at least, which is that conflict about pornography can be a way that people avoid talking about what they really need to talk about, which may in fact be, you know, our sex life is not the way that it used to be, or our sex life is not the way that I want. And as it happens, both people in the couple want to avoid talking about that, not just one, but both. So the question for us as a profession is, are we raising this issue? Are we raising this issue? Or are we just as glad to back away from this issue? Are we just as glad to collude with couples who want to avoid this issue? Which would be understandable, but it limits the effectiveness of therapy. And of course, therapists who pathologize the decline of sex in long-term relationships, that colludes with people's avoidance too. When we tell couples the equivalent of, wait, you love each other, you're both interesting people, you're both attractive, and you're having issues with sex, well, we've got to fix that.
Dr. Tammy Nelson, author of Getting the Sex You Want, Shed Your Inhibitions, and Reach New Heights of Passion Together.
I really think that, one of the mistakes that we make as sex therapists and as relationship therapists and as authors and as couples therapists and as marriage and family therapists is that we don't take the recovery far enough. There's really nothing written out there beyond our brilliant colleagues here, beyond forgiveness. We take couples all the way to forgiveness, and then what? What is transformation? The title of this conference is From Trauma to Transformation. What is transformation? What is the goal for you as the couple sits in your office? What does it mean to be successful? Okay, does it mean to restore them to their prior level of success? What is that? So I want to say that the way that I look at it is that affairs are sometimes a way to shake things up, to destabilize the relationship on purpose. I don't know about you, but have you ever had a couple that said to you after several weeks or months of treatment, you know what? That affair is the best thing that ever happened to us. How many of you? Raise your hand. I mean, if you look around, that's over half the room. So if that's true, why are we saying that affairs are pathological? Why are we saying that the couple does this as a result of a marriage gone bad? Maybe we're doing affair treatment from the wrong perspective. So what I say is regardless of what your perspective is on that, I'm not going to try to change your mind or expand on what's already been said, because there's been some brilliant things said in the past couple of days. Let's take the recovery a little bit further. Because until you move the couple from that erotic injury, an affair is an erotic injury. It's an injury to the erotic arena, okay? It's not an injury to their friendship, okay? We're not working with roommates. We're working with couples that are an erotic couple. They were brought together by desire for each other. They didn't get together because they make good roommates. You could probably find a better roommate, frankly. And so let's move them towards erotic recovery. Until you do that, as Janice says, the specter of that third person is still in bed with you. Until we move them into that healing place. You know, I think the fear that therapists have about talking about sex comes from our cultural restriction about talking about sex. Most therapists are afraid to ask about sex. Most therapists wait. And they'd say, you know what, we're going to work on the companionship, the day-to-day, get along, manage the business, the corporation of your marriage. Couples come to therapy to learn how to communicate, to learn how to process the trauma or the long-term neglect that's been in the marriage or the committed partnership. So many of us leave the idea of sex until the companionship works itself out. I was told, before I wrote my book, Getting the Sex You Want, I was told by a lot of people, look, we don't need to talk about sex because if you work on the relationship, the sex will fix itself. And what I found, and perhaps you found this as well, is that if you work on the sex, a lot of times the relationship fixes itself.
These programs and more are available for purchase at Lifespan Learning Institute.